Chapter 2, Basic Techniques of Family Therapy. In this chapter, we're going to talk about some of the basic skills that are required for the initial client contact and interview, and then we're going to also go through the early and middle phases of treatment as well as termination. Let's begin with the initial phone call. The goal of the initial contact with the client is to get an overview of the presenting problem and arrange for the family to come in for consultation. During this first interview, the therapist wants to try to build an alliance with the family. Let them see that you are for the family, that you are not there to pinpoint one person as the problem, but you're there for the good of the family to work together to help them have a healthier, more rewarding relationship. During this initial session or interview, we're also going to gather necessary information. I usually begin by letting the family know that there's usually been something going on for a while, but something has happened that's caused them to say, okay, now is the time that we need to go get help. And that gives them kind of a jumping off point to tell me what has happened most recently, but also to gather a history of what has been going on in the family. You may also want to work with the family to formulate a hypothesis about what is maintaining the problem, or this may be something that you want to do yourself after meeting with the family. During the early phase of treatment, the therapist is going to try to kind of refine their hypothesis. This means they will ask some questions to either confirm or disprove some of the thoughts and ideas they have about the family and what's maintaining the issues. Also, during the early phase of treatment, we begin to work with the family to resolve some of the interpersonal conflicts and some of the painful interactions that they're going through at this time. No matter what techniques that the therapist uses during this time, it's very important to maintain a therapeutic alliance. And basically what a therapeutic alliance is, it means listening to and acknowledging the client's point of view. Now, that doesn't mean that the therapist is a yes man or always agrees with everything, but they do listen to and acknowledge the validity of the client's feelings or their point of view. Now, as we go on, the therapist will redirect some thinking or propose some challenges to the opinions or the ideas that the family members have about their situation. These challenges can be blunt, depending on the therapist's style, or can be very gentle. And again, with experience, the therapist will develop their own style and they'll become confident enough that if the family needs to be more directly confronted, they'll be able to do that. If the family is more sensitive or more sensitive to what they might perceive as criticism, then the therapist will present their ideas in a different way. During the middle phase of treatment, the therapist begins to take a less directive role. During this time, we're encouraging the family members to interact more with each other. They have hopefully learned some things from you as the therapist. I always tell them they're getting new tools to use. And then their work during the week or so between sessions is to go out and use these tools and practice using these tools, and then come back, tell me how it went, or tell the therapist how it went, and then the therapist can point out what went wrong or maybe encourage them to try something different, and even letting them kind of discuss it in front of you as the therapist. That way you can see the interactions and kind of coach them along in the safety of the counseling office. As we move into termination, Depending on what type of therapy you're doing, this will be at different time periods. For the brief therapist, as soon as the presenting problem is resolved, then that therapy is gone. And again, this may be that brief therapy is your school of thought, or it may be that because of insurance or other restraints, this is what you are limited to. For psychoanalysts, therapy could continue for years, but for most therapists, termination comes somewhere in between. Um, Talking with the family continually about goals so that you continue to move forward. Then, when you've achieved one goal, is there another goal that we want to work towards? Or have we accomplished what they had hoped to accomplish? Sorry about that. When the family feels that they can manage their lives without professional help, they may be ready to terminate. One thing that I have happened quite a bit is that families will feel ready to try to manage things without professional help, but they'll ask me if they can come back in a month or 2 months for a checkup. And of course, the door is always open if they feel like they're getting stuck or they have slipping back into some old habits. They'll come back in and we'll kind of do a checkup and get back on track. Before terminating a family, it's very useful to review what was learned. This is just good teaching skills also. Going back over what they've learned, I usually try to review the victories that they've had and how far they've come, and continuing to encourage them to move forward. When you work with a family, remember that every case is unique. Of course, when you've done it for quite a while, you'll begin to see some similarities, but the dynamics of each family is based on the personality of the family members, the experiences, and different things. So approach each case as being very unique and listen to the family's account of the problem. Part of forming the therapeutic alliance is to be interested and to be open. You can show this by asking detailed questions, giving them time to talk even if you think you know what they're going to say, but treating them as an individual family that's very unique, not making them feel like they're crazy or you've never seen anything this terrible. And sometimes they'll actually ask you, have you ever seen a family so mixed up or a family so crazy? And of course, assuring them that their case is nothing that, can't be worked through, but also treating them as the unique family unit that they are. Taking into account the systemic context, the stage of the family life cycle. As we talk about the family life cycle, it'll be important to kind of ask yourself, why now? Where are they in this family life cycle that would cause them to seek help now? Looking at family structure, what are the subsystems and the nature of the boundaries between them? What triangles are present? Who in the family tends to kind of team up against others, or is there extended family involved? Where's the communication breakdown? You'll see communication issues very often with couples. A lot of them come to therapy saying they have communication problems. As you go into this, you'll find out that a lot of times it's one person won't do what the other person wants them to, and so they're not communicating. And then, depending on the population of people that you work with, just being sensitive to gender inequalities, cultural issues, and ethical issues, because all of those things will come into play as you're dealing with the family. So, as we look at the family assessment, we're going to look at the presenting problem, what has brought them to therapy at this time. We're going to understand the referral route. How did they get to you? Were they referred from someone else? Did they ask for recommendations for a therapist? did their insurance, make them choose between a limited number of therapists? Were they court ordered the therapy? Because all of those things can play into it. And then also the systemic context. And basically, what we're looking at here is looking at the family in context. Is everybody there in your office, or is there let's say, a grandparent that's very controlling that's not there? Are there, is there a boyfriend or an ex-husband or wife that still has influence? So making sure that you have a clear understanding of that. And then, like I said, the stage they are in the life cycle, the family structure, and their communication. Other things that may come into play are drug and alcohol abuse. This is a very important issue if it is present in the family system, and it's important that we not overlook it. Now, if you're not confident or comfortable dealing with substance abuse, this may be a time to make a referral, but you have to take it into account when you're talking about the family system and issues there. We also need to be aware of domestic violence issues and child abuse issues. If there is any hint of domestic violence or sexual abuse, the therapist needs to look into it. And then, of course, if there's any hint of child abuse, most states require us to report any suspicion of child abuse. Okay, we are mandatory reporters, as are teachers, police, other people that are in positions to find out about child abuse. You don't have to prove that there's child abuse. It is just reports of suspicion. But what makes it tough for us is that suspected child abuse and reporting it can jeopardize that therapeutic alliance. And what we need to understand, though, is that we are mandatory reporters and that there are consequences legally and ethically if we do not report this information. Extramarital affairs comes up sometimes. In the course of therapy, you may discover that there's an affair or that there has been an affair, and this can be very detrimental to the relationship. And if you know about the affair but it hasn't been confessed or admitted to the other partner, that can put you in a tough spot. And understanding that extramarital involvements don't always involve sexual intimacy, especially now with more social media. There have been a lot of emotional affairs. There has been, pornography, sexting, and internet affairs. So just being aware that those things may exist and getting comfortable with how to handle those. Gender issues may come out. There's conflict over gender expectations, taking into account the cultural background of your client. If you're not familiar with their culture, or you have not, studied some of the cultural sensitivity, understanding that, because there are different kind of unspoken rules based on different ethnicities and cultures. And so this would be an important background for you to have as you worked with a variety of families.